It is Santa Clarita's hometown station, KHTS. I am Kyle Jellings. Appreciate you hanging out with me for this quick. We're busting the break here, is what we're doing. We'll go back to the Most Music Hour, all of your holiday favorites in just a moment. But we have a very special guest in studio. He is Frank Butterworth, and he is the author of Paul Gauguin's. Did I say that right? Paul Gauguin.
Pretty close.
That's close, right?
Paul Gauguin's.
Paul Gauguin's son. The Life and Times of Emile Gauguin. Gauguin, not Gauguin.
Gauguin.
Oh man, I've never spoken French, never took a French class, so I apologize.
That's okay.
I apologize. But I want to talk about you a little bit, Frank. Frank is you're not a Santa Clarita native. You've been where are you from originally?
I'm a newcomer. Well, I was born in Pennsylvania, and then I kind of.
You're not a Steelers fan, are you?
Sorry.
You're not a Steelers fan, are you?
Kind of.
Okay, good. Because we have a guy in the back who's a hardcore Steeler fan from Pennsylvania, and he's insufferable. So.
Okay. Yeah, I lived all over. Lived in Philadelphia, New York, Virginia, you name it.
Okay.
Illinois, Arizona, California twice.
Oh, okay.
And,
so what is your background, Frank? You wrote a book, obviously, which is this guy right here.
I was a professor of biology, and so I taught and did research for a number of years, and then always wanted to be a writer. And so when I retired, I started writing and scientific stuff. But then a guy gave me a call, and he says, "Are you Frank Butterworth?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Do you know Emile Gauguin?" And I said, "Do I? He was my virtual grandfather."
No.
And so he says, I'm a fan of Paul Gauguin, his father, but I said, I'd like to learn more about him. And so we got together and we became buddies and actually co-authors. So his name is David McIntyre. And so he did a lot of the early legwork. He collected all the documents and so forth. And I kind of wanted to find out more about my virtual grandfather because I only know him for the last 10 years or so of his life. He was just a nice old man who taught me a lot of interesting stuff. And when we got into it, we were really surprised. We were just blown away by the kind of life that he led when we didn't know about it until we actually did the research.
He's Frank Butterworth. He is the co-author of Paul Gauguin's son, The Life and Times of Emile Gauguin. And I wanted to ask you, so did you have interest in, when you wanted to be a writer, did you have an interest in doing scientific stuff? Because your background is in genetics and cell biology. You were a professor in that field. Did you want to do scientific stuff? Did you want to do nonfiction? Did you want to fiction? What was your
I really wasn't too sure. I had a memoir that I wanted to write, and I wanted there were some other things I wanted to do. My mother was a writer, and I guess it was in the blood.
Okay, so this is not your first book.
No, I've written a couple of scientific books.
Okay.
And there you can see those on the Amazon website. But we want to go into them. They're too expensive and too full of stuff. So. Okay. This is a good book. This is really an interesting book. You know, I wrote it, but I have to say it's pretty good. I mean, you know, I like reading it again. Okay. You know, the scientific stuff I write, I don't like reading it again. But this is kind of fun.
Okay, so give me the gist. Give me the don't give anything away, but give me what is this story? What is this about?
Okay, no spoilers, but they're really three stories in one.
Okay.
They're woven together. It's an adventure story. As I say, this will really grab you, the adventure story. The other is a love story that went terribly wrong. And,
not many people can probably relate to that, right?
Yeah. I tell people about it, and they said, that happened to me.
Yeah.
But this happened 3 times. And it's also a story about a son who just cannot live up to the expectations of his father. Even though his father died quite early in life, his father was so famous that this guy was just like clobbered. But every time he always felt he was never able to measure up. I got a couple of quotes here. If there's time, I can read them.
Yeah, give me one of them.
But the point here is that as I say, these three themes kind of pass through the whole book. I mean, he never stops talking about his dad.
Okay.
He never stops talking about his ex-wife.
So those are the two kind the battles that he's going through.
And he was a soldier of fortune. First of all, he trained as to become an officer in the military. He went to an elite, I guess you call it a military academy. They call them knight schools, where you were trained to be a knight, but you were trained to be a statesman or a scientist. In his case, he was an engineer. So these were kind of like military leaders that in Denmark, where he had his early training, and in Germany, where they started these night schools, they call them. They trained to be to a knight, fight on horseback. But yet, when you weren't fighting, you were leading people as a politician or somebody like this. Okay, here are a couple of quotes here.
Again, as he's looking for that, we're speaking with Frank Butterworth. He is the co-author of Paul Gauguin's son, The Life and Times of Emile Gauguin. Give me just a couple quotes here.
Okay, here's
Frank.
the first quote. It says here, Emile felt that being Paul Gauguin's son was a curse. He often denied any relationship when people asked. They would ask him, are you related to the famous painter? And he'd just say no and walk away. In his one of the great things about this book is he wrote his own biography. And it was a letter to his cousin in Colombia, and this is where he spent a lot of his time was in Colombia, Bogota, Colombia.
Oh.
He says, in his long, dismal letter to Maria Elena, Emile wrote briefly about his mother's three brothers-in-law in the Brandes family. He said that two were highly recognized in their fields, but Ernst, though he was more intelligent, had the fewest credits. Later, he was falsely found and imprisoned by religious blasphemy.
How about that?
And he was in such a fit of depression that when he got out of jail, he committed suicide.
Oh, holy cow.
Emile, and this is the quote, Emile seemed to be drawing a parallel. He was smarter, but less accomplished than his two brothers. And he said, I'm as good as dead.
Man.
Okay, so those are the two quotes.
So,
chapter 4 and chapter 7.
So where do we get a hold of this, Frank? How do we get a hold of this book?
You can get it at Amazon.com.
Heard of it?
It's in two versions. The print version, which you're just looking at right now, for
right here.
$19. And then there's a Kindle version, an ebook, which is half the price.
Awesome. All right, Frank, thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate you being here, and good luck on your future endeavors, and hope you write some more stuff.
Well,
I'm sure you got some stuff in the works.
I do, and thanks very much.
All right.
Appreciate it being here.
Quick break. More of your holiday favorites next.